Hello, everyone. This is Sorat from TPC. Uh, Today, I'm trying to spread some interest in the Rawls reading group sessions we are going to develop with S in some more days. So I will make a very short explanation of what Rawls means in general, what is his style in general, and this by going through chapter 2 of A Theory of Justice. Um, this chapter is pretty central. I thought it would be better to start with it rather than the first chapter because it gets more quickly to the meat of the stuff. So the principles of justice, the exposition is going to be more or less about paragraph 10 to paragraph 17. There are other two paragraphs, but they are not that important. Where we are, a theory in two parts. This chapter is the first. Uh, the theory of justice is two, as it says there, it's two parts. First, an interpretation of the initial situation and the principles available for choice there, principles that are for the basic structure of society, and then an argument that certain principles would in fact be chosen in that situation. Chapter 2 takes up part 1. Before showing which conception of justice will be agreed to, Rawls lays out the candidate principles themselves. What Rawls is gonna do here is to present really a picture of what he deems as a just society. Justice being, uh, by its own definition, the justice of the basic structure of society. So it is a picture because it is the first part of the theory that is more intuitive. According to his reflexive equilibrium, he's gonna start with this intuitive approach, and then he's going to show us how deductively we can reach that goal. That will be in chapter 3. This is chapter 2. So, on a personal note, before presenting the picture that seems to him most intuitively adequate to the idea of justice, Rawls first presents the first characteristic valid for any picture, i.e., any basic structure and under any principles. And that is why he, in paragraph 10, he talks about institutions and formal justice. And by this, he's not talking about this or that principle of justice, but about the properties of principles in general for any basic structure. So principles of justice stricto sensu, because justice stricto sensu is for the basic structure of society, determine the assignment of rights and duties in institutions, offices, and positions, and the appropriate distribution of benefits and burdens in social life, the distribution of goods. An institution is a public system of rules. Persons of a determinate class are expected to act in conformity with a predetermined regularity of acts, and everyone reciprocally recognizes that everyone knows these rules. So these are institutions. Institutions are rules. Institutions is not just formal institutions. For example, there in a personal note, I say offices and positions is broadly social position, not only formal state organization. The aspect of well, later I will talk about this, but I think of it as the aspect of social life in which social social life, um, one is active rather than passively acquiring or consuming goods. Uh, mm, those are the kinds of rights and duties that give you an office or a position. Uh, and those are rules um, you execute when you are being active, while you at the same time are entitled in a passive way to these distributions of benefits and burdens. And all of this has a certain regularity. It does not happen because of contingency. That is basically the most important uh, um, endeavor of Rawls, that contingencies exist, but we must make them, like master them, like overcome them. And then institutions may be just or unjust by an independent criterion, but their primary justice is formal justice, the the uniform character essential to law, treating similar cases in similar ways. So any society is at least just if there is this formal aspect, this formal justice. Like even caste societies, like aristocratic societies, like if there is an uniform application of rules, then at least this formal form of justice is satisfied. It is the minimum. Like for Montesquieu, for example, like despotism was the worst. Monarchy was fine, republic was fine, but the problem with despotism is the vanity of the ruler's wills, the the capricious nature of it. So that's the first element. But then he's going to get to his principles. And there are two principles. Paragraph 11 introduces to us two principles. The first principle is the most important, and is that of equal basic liberty. It is the most important because of the lexical priority in Rawls. Although I've heard he sort of withdrew about this, but it doesn't matter. The thing is, there's a lexical priority in many of the principles and sub principles he's going to show us, and this is the most important and has to be respected in in priority in regarding the second one. And it says that each person is to have an equal right to the most extensive basic liberty compatible with a similar liberty for others. The basic liberty roughly are political liberty, freedom of speech, liberty of conscience, and freedom of thought, freedom of the person, right to hold personal property, freedom for arbitrary arrest. Citizens of a just society are to have the same basic rights. The first principle admits no unequal distribution of these liberties. Okay, so this is very simple, and it's so simple that, like, Rawls takes it for granted, and he's not gonna explain further what are these liberties. Uh, there's no theory of this first principle. All gets around the second principle. All the development of Rawls' theory is about the second principle. So that I don't know if it is a flaw or not, but it is certainly strange, and certainly there are other authors who have uh, uh, um, developed some thought about the collision of rights or liberties of this first kind, like Robert Alexey regarding constitutional law and the test of proportionality, for example. So liberty cannot be bugged. The principle has lexical priority over the second. It must be fully satisfied before the second principles come into play. And they can conflict only between one and others, but mm, they are never going to conflict with the second principle because they prevail absolutely. Okay, you cannot change your liberty for more money. Basically, you cannot. The second principle is the great the most important thing for us, or the thing that needs to be developed, because here is where he's going to introduce to us the idea that inequalities are just, and not in the sense that a libertarian society is just or whatever. No, 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 no. Inequalities are just because they tend to equality. And this is going to be the counterintuitive point in Rawls, basically, but he develops it very well. So the second principle in its first formulation tells us that social and economic inequalities are to be arranged so that they are both A, reasonably expected to be to everyone's advantage, and B, attached to positions and offices open to all. Both highlight phrases are ambiguous. The work of paragraphs 12 to 14 is to specify them. Also paragraph 17. Each admits a weaker and stronger reading, and the pairings yield the three rival interpretation of the principle. Um, so, on a personal note, in the second principle, equality concerns the beginning of the process of justice distribution, where social life is active, while everyone's advantage, later equated with fraternity in the democratic triad, concerns the outcome of the process. This is a thought of mine. Is how I see it, or maybe it's explicit in Rawls. I'm not sure. But oh well, the idea is think of it like that, like this second principle has these two sub principles, one being uh, the start, and the other being the outcome, the beginning and the outcome. And this is a principle that talks about a process. It is not a state of affair of justice. It is a process of justice. That's why one sub principle is the beginning and the other sub principle is the outcome for me. And both are ambiguous phrases. Both are phrases that need to be specified, and not because they are wrong, but they are not totally clarified in their true sense. And for this, he's going to talk about first, let's say that primary goods, that which has to do with the advantage of people, are firstly social primary goods, rights and liberties, powers and opportunities, income and wealth, and there is natural primary goods, like health and vigor, intelligence and imagination. We can change social primary goods rather quickly, rather fast, but natural primary goods, no. However, Rawls is gonna talk some kind of eugenics. Like he's going to go that far. Uh, um, but he rapidly becomes shy about that idea and doesn't talk too much about it. But he's ambitious enough to say we are not only uh, changing social primary goods, even the natural ones. Like we're going to tame all of the justice of this system. But I was saying, there's now the moment to specify these two ambiguous phrases. Uh, and that's why in paragraph 12 there is are interpretations of the second principle, and there are three readings of the ambiguous phrases. Well, there is also the aristocratic one, but he's not gonna take much time in it. So first there is natural liberty, where everyone's advantage it's equates to the principle of efficiency, and open to all equates to career open to talents in a formal equality. In the second interpretation, liberal equality, everyone's advantage equates to still the principle of efficiency, and open to all it's again still fair equality of opportunity. I'm sorry. It is not again career open to talents. It is now fair equality of opportunity, but it is an imperfect one. It is an imperfect one. It is only in three, democratic equality, where everyone advantage changes into something that is the difference principle, and open to all change totally to something that is fair equality of opportunity in its pure form. So in liberal equality we kinda advance with this trying to change the open to all phrase, but rather not totally achieving it. But there's only but when you really achieve it, it is by the way of introducing the difference principle, and because of that, fair equality of opportunity becomes pure forms. So this really a process in which, by reflecting equilibrium, again one part influences the other and becomes the real one. So each successive system corrects a moral arbitrariness. The previous one leaves standing. The argument builds toward democratic equality. To specify, in natural liberty, the point is efficiency alone. Like the principle of efficiency is Pareto optimality. A configuration is efficient when no change can make some person better off without making others worse off. Under efficiency per se, we don't care in which direction the economy grows, only that it grows. As a criterion of justice, one cannot make worse off whoever had the luck to reach the better position first. But the principle of efficiency does not by itself select one distribution as the efficient one. Every point on the frontier qualifies. And there we have this graph where every point on frontier AB is efficient. C and D alike. Efficiency cannot choose between them. Which one obtains depends on who reached the better position first. So with this criterion, we are always gonna try to reach the frontier, but it will be unjust if you modify the distribution of the goods in a sense which makes worse off whoever had the luck to be in the privileged position first. So it is, if this is the only justice of efficiency, that of not making worse off whoever is better off, then we can see how efficiency, classically taken by utilitarianism and the others, it's clearly and well intuitively for us unjust criterion. Uh, so the frontier is fixed by luck, which efficient distribution results in any period is determined by the initial distribution of assets, of income and wealth, and of natural talents and abilities. So here is not only in natural liberty, there's also not only the efficiency principle, but also the careers open to talents that gives a formal equality. All have the same legal right of access to advantage position. With no effort to preserve similar conditions, the initial distribution is strongly influenced by natural social contingencies in a cumulative effect of prior distributions. So there's only contingencies. The contingencies determine by luck the first point, the point of the privileged one, and the privileged one is always obviously going to appear like he's going to be more qualified. He's going to be more qualified for offices and positions. That is natural. So the economy is going to grow with him in the direction in the same direction. And so what determines this at the beginning are the contingencies of social endowments, family situation, natural endowments, and fortune. At least fortune we can attain, but the other three, Rawls seems to think we in the long term can. On a personal note of mine, Rawls seems to assume that whoever has more rights as an active participant in institutions will at the same time passively benefit from the whole system to a greater extent. So there's a reciprocal effect between the phrase everyone's advantage and the phrase open to all. Like one has to do with the other, etc., etc., etc. And what the distribution of it is not only distribution of goods, which is the passive part of social life, but also the distribution of rights, and rights as being in an institution, which is the active aspect of life. And it seems to be that when you are being distributed more rights in an active sense, well, it seems that at the same time you are being distributed more goods. That is the passive sense. Well, then we pass to liberal equality as a second interpretation. That is better but still imperfect. Liberal equality improves the open to all phrase with the principle of fair equality of opportunity. Those at the same level of talent and ability, with the same willingness to use them, should have the same prospects of success, regardless of their initial place in the social system. This requires further structural conditions: free market state within a framework of political and legal institutions that regulates the overall trends of economic events and preserves the social conditions needs for fair opportunity. Yet it remains imperfect. Even working to perfection in eliminating social contingencies, it still permits wealth and income to be determined by the natural distribution of abilities and talents, and by the family into which one happens to be born. So yeah, what this is what I was saying before. Like, um, in this way, this way of benefiting the less uh, the less fortunate people, just by giving them better social condition, etc., etc. uh, uh, it's not going by itself going to replace the cumulative effect of prior initial distributions. In what follows, both ambiguous phrases "everyone's advantage" and "open to all" get perfect injustice through a process of mutual accommodation. Like I said before, I am sorry, the slides have some errors. I am sorry about that. Uh, so democratic equality, in democratic equality, takes appearance the difference principle, the famous difference principle. Uh, the democratic interpretation combines fair equality of opportunity with the difference principle, which removes the indeterminateness of efficiency by singling out a particular position, the least advantage, from which inequalities are to be judged. Unless there is a distribution making both persons better off, a more equal distribution is preferred. A strongly egalitarian conception that works on inequality but tends toward equality. Greater expectations for entrepreneurs are permissible only as incentives that raise the prospects of the laboring class, and only up to the point where the benefit to the least advantage turns marginally negative. So let's see the right here, this graph. This is the graph about the indifference curves. So indifference curves show us just equal distributions that are equally just. So for example, if in this case, in this graph, differently to the graph of efficiency, the graph of indifference curves, in the graph of indifference curves, x1 and has not it's not that x1 and x2 are going to have the same possibilities of being one or the other better off. Now here we presuppose that x1 is always better off. Okay, so he's always better off, but every one of the advancements towards the making better of x1, at the same time, it's going to secure, in terms of justice, should secure at least the same amount of wealth and rights to x2. Like, there's always a level that is secured and is determined by these indifference curves that are horizontal to, and then vertical to the 45-degree line of the graph. So and because we only think about the better off person, there's only the part under the 45 degrees line that is really important. The other one is not important. And so we are never going to consider the idea of decreasing a certain wealth and rights secured for x2. Even though we increase the wealth and rights of x1, but because x2 prospects are not being decreased, like never. Well, at least it is just in this sense. And all the positions in the indifference curve are just equally just. But there are indifference curves that are higher than others, and because of that, they are more just in the sense that the amount of wealth and rights that is secured for x2, the worst of person, is higher. And of course, x1's prospects increased and increased and increased, but x2 is never made worse off, or at least shouldn't, because of the justice of the stuff. But then we add a contribution curve, and this contribution curve is going to tell us until which point it is a good idea to make x1 better off, the better, the most advantaged person, to make this person better off, because there's a social contribution that in a certain point becomes marginally negative. So if the contribution is marginally negative, okay, I can increase the prospects of x1, and theoretically the prospects of x2 are going to increase too. But this is in a to the marginally negative degree. So it's not a good idea to continue making better off the person who was better off. There is a point in which it is a good idea to stop making better off the most privileged one, and in this moment we should distribute for the least privilege in favor of the least privileged person. And this is when the open to all phrases is specified in the sense of fair opportunity and pure procedural justice. Positions must be genuinely open in the following sense: if some places were not open on a fair basis, those kept out would rightly feel unjustly treated, even if they benefited from the greater efforts of those allowed to hold them. They will be debarrassed from the realization of the self that comes from the skillful, devout exercise of social duties, one of the main forms of human good. So it is not enough to be fed by others. There is in Rawls an idea that exercising your rights and duties in an institutional sense has to do, and which thing that has to do with a rational plan designed, and that you must fulfill. That is a form of good, an important form of good. And the point is that this distribution comes before allocation, in the sense that it doesn't matter if there are people more qualified to certain offices and positions, because there is a point in which, as I said before, there is a point by the indifference principle, there is a point in which I need to stop benefiting the better off person, and I benefit the least disadvantaged person by giving that person certain rights that have to do with offices and positions, even if persons may say, "Oh, but this person is not qualified for that office and position," etc., etc. Uh, in a certain extent, those persons that are not that qualified should be made uh, made responsible, uh, made bear the duty, the social duty, uh, because they merit it in another sense, not in the meritocracy, the sense of the meritocracy, not in the sense of the meritocracy, but because of this rational distribution that has to do with the pure procedural justice, that says that there is no independent criterion for the right result. A fair procedure makes its outcome fair, whatever it is, provided the procedure was properly followed. It is not allocative. Goods don't go to need or desire, but purely distributed, grounded in the justice of the scheme of cooperation. So our final formulation is that social and economic inequalities, as final formulation of the second principle, I mean, is that social and economic inequalities are to be arranged so that they are both A, to the greatest expected benefit of the least advantage, and B, attached to offices and positions open to all under conditions of fair equality of opportunity. So that is why there is an accommodation between the the difference principle and fair equality of opportunity in in its pure form. So in paragraph 17, paragraph 15 and 16, obviously they are important, but they are not the essential. So in paragraph 17, it shows what I was saying before, that in reality this inequality is an inequality by which equality is achieved. Because this is a world of contingencies, we obviously cannot approach what is complex in its form by a non-complex, geometrically speaking, idea of equality. Equality needs a process that has inequality in its heart. So fraternity and the democratic triad, the difference principle gives a natural meaning to fraternity, not wanting greater advantages unless this benefits those less well off. The ideal family already rejects maximizing the sum of advantages. Members do not wish to gain except in ways that further the interests of the rest. Those better circumstances are willing to have their greater advantages only under a scheme that works out for the benefit of the less fortunate. So so this is why he calls it the democratic equality, and the second principle by democratic equality, because it has in itself the triad, the liberté, égalité, fraternité triad, so liberty is it's basically in the first principle about the equal liberties. Equality has to do with the with some equality in the first principle, but together with the equality of uh, fair equality of opportunity. And fraternity is the difference principle. That is to say, wanted advantages, and here I will say it's not on the unless not wanting greater advantages unless these benefits to the no, it's not in the negative sense. It is because I will say I haven't read the rest of the book, but I will say that you want advantage if they benefit everyone. Those advantages you want them because they benefit everyone, and by benefiting the least advantage. So it's the least advantage, and that mathematically for Rawls is it's gonna be who where we need to put the focus. Okay, so this has been my presentation. I really hope you. I'm sorry, my microphone is not the better, and there were some spelling mistakes in the slides, but I really wish I could spread some interest in this reading course. I am very excited for the opportunity to do this with S, who is gonna be a co-leader with me, and I'm very happy to work with her. And well, I really hope I can see some of you in this reading course. I am not a political philosopher, I'm a lawyer, and that's why there's gonna be some law in between. But this is a first picture I can make, like in about a chapter that is in itself the showing of a picture. Then and we'll have to wait for chapter 3 for explaining us why this picture is correct. So thank you very much, and I hope I see you in the reading course. Bye bye.